Hey everyone, welcome to Life in Full Send, Athletes Reimagine, the podcast where we discuss the experience of redefining life after being an athlete. I'm your host, Liz Hall, an athlete integration specialist and your teammate in navigating that big question, what comes after sports? Each week I sit down with former athletes who have faced that very question and share how they navigated the transition. Quickly, be sure to subscribe and share the pod so you can catch all the stories. This week's episode features Chris Vasami, former MLB draft pick, keynote speaker, and performance coach. It actually all seems not quite enough to describe him. He has beaten cancer multiple times and opens up about the mindset shifts that have taken place for him to be able to share his story today. Let's check it out. After 6 years of playing professional baseball, you were released. You were given the permission to dream to go pro, and you had the athletic ability. In that moment when you realized kind of everything you've been working for is now done, what did it feel like specifically mentally and emotionally?
Being called into the office and saying, Chris, we love you as a person. We love you as a part of this organization. We actually want to offer you a job as a coach, but your skills are no longer needed as a baseball player. You're in shock because it's like, wait, hold on. I'm so close to this. And this is what I've been working for my whole life. And then, the anger and the frustration and almost a little bit of resentment of like, no, there's people in the majors that I know I'm better than. But it's then the reality of, wait, but this is a business. Don't forget that. You learned this a long time ago. So there's just so much going on. But I mean, it's really, truly the identity crisis that comes from it. And I have to be honest, I had already started my training business years before that in preparation for the moment. And even with that, a year, 2 years went by. I wouldn't even watch baseball. I didn't want to know about it because, again, so many people that I knew I was better than were in the majors. And I'm just young and dumb and wasn't understanding at the time that I really ended up having a greater purpose. I thought my gift to the world was going to be being a baseball player. And there were other plans for me.
You spoke about anger, some resentment. How much did grief play a role for you, and how did you learn to work with it?
It's so interesting you say this. I was full of grief just from the letdown standpoint and not understanding that with grief has to come grace. I wasn't mature enough for that yet. With grief has to come gratitude. I wasn't grateful. I wasn't grateful for the time that I had. I wasn't grateful for the relationships that I had made. I wasn't grateful for the journey. I wasn't grateful for the fact that I had professional baseball player next to my name for the rest of my life. I wasn't grateful for the idea that 0.5% of high school players get to call themselves a professional. Like, I wasn't grateful for any of that stuff in the moment. So it was full of grief.
Appreciate that you said that, to that contrast, because so often we can get locked in to a feeling. Sometimes when we know we don't want to feel that, if we don't put something else as an option, we can stay stuck. Well, I'll ask people, what do you want? And then they start to tell me what they don't want. It's like, okay, let's pause here. I hear you. I asked you what you wanted. You told me what you didn't want. So now let's take that opposite. If it's not that, which you've identified very clearly, let's look at what you do, because that's the trick. That's the game, is where we focus is what's going to be happening. And so many people focus on what they don't want.
But I think what it all comes down to is being okay, not being okay in those moments. But a lot of that I went through, not just in those moments, but also as a player, when you sit back and really be able to take a deep dive into some self-reflection and some self-inventory, that's when you start to see all the good that came from it, even though the end goal was not what you always thought it was going to be.
How long was the process of, did you sit in victim?
18 months.
18 months.
Mm-hmm.
What snapped you out? What was the shift?
I was living with a lack of hope, and I had hit rock bottom. I had just gotten out of the hospital. I went into the hospital with what was called a thyroid storm. I went in, they put me on some pretty heavy drugs. I slept, I woke up, everything was more stable. And the doctors looked at me saying, I actually don't know how you walked in here, because the levels that you were at, no one should be living with. So I got out of the hospital and I called a friend of mine who had told me about this doctor that she had been using, and called up, and the doctor said, yeah, come on down. And so I drove from Charlotte to Charleston. I met with my doctor, Dr. Henderson, and she met with me for like 2 hours. And I walked out and I was like, wow, I actually have some hope right now. So I went home, and this was like right at the end of the year, end of December. And I was like, I'm gonna go for a walk. And Charlotte has, North Carolina has these really, really cold winter days sometimes, but there's bright blue skies and the sun is shining. And so it's just like this dichotomy of a day. And it was one of those days. And so I was like, I'm going to go for a walk. And so I went for a walk, and something told me to take my shoes off. So I took my shoes off and I took my socks off, and I'm literally walking barefoot around my neighborhood. And it hit me. It was for the first time in forever, I was just allowing myself to be in the moment. And I could feel the cold and gravel underneath my feet. I could feel the sun shining on my face. I could hear the birds and the leaves and the trees. And I was like, whoa, you're still alive. You could have been dead 3 times by now. And from that moment on, it was that was the paradigm shift right there.
It is giving ourselves permission to go outside of everything we've ever known. It's permission to go outside of what our parents tell us we can do. It's giving ourselves permission to go outside of what we've only known in our environment or who we've grown up around. In order to seek new, we have to get into a new environment. And sometimes that can be challenging too.
Yeah, no, and it's literally setting a new neurological pathway in your brain. It becomes a new roadmap to success. And so the idea is, as you go out and you suffer, but yet conquer those unknowns, and you find these new growth periods, the idea is that now you have this roadmap. So like, there is no retreat. There is no going backwards. The obstacle is now welcome.
The obstacle becomes the way.
Mm-hmm. Great book.
It gets easier the more you do it. So every time I try something new now at 41, there's not all the overthinking or what's going to happen. It ceases to exist because I don't know. And I won't know until I do it. So I think the more we do it, just like you said, it's a neural pathway. And here, listen, if you're on this listening and you've had 7 concussions, because I think that's 6 or 7 says, okay, there's some damage. You still have neuroplasticity on your side. You still can build new neural pathways and redesign your brain in a way that supports you. And that there are no excuses. There is commitment. There is discipline, all the same. Right. There is no substitute for that. What is your new definition of success, Chris?
90% of the time, doing what I know makes me be at my best. Human beings are so interesting because we just want to believe that we are above average. And if we're above average, then we can convince ourselves that we're elite. And as former athletes, we know what elite is. And so we sit there and we go, okay, 7 days in a week, divide it by 2, 3.5, round up 4. 4 out of 7 days. If I do what I'm supposed to, and I show up for myself, then I must be elite. Well, 4 divided by 7 is a 57%. 5 divided by 7 is a 71%. So if you are not 6 out of 7 days, 7 out of 7 days, week after week, month after month, season after season, putting in that work, showing up for yourself, doing what you know you can do so that you are now sitting there living a fulfilled life, personally, professionally, relationally, spiritually, then we're not even tapping into what success can be for us. So yes, there are going to be plenty of days where, something gets in the way or I don't feel good, whatever, but I'm trying to limit those days as much as I can. So success is I make non-negotiables for myself. I come through with those non-negotiables. And every Sunday I sit down and I take inventory. And most of those questions, if not all of them, need to be answered.
What are a couple non-negotiables these days for you?
I have to work out 7 days a week because of all the health stuff that I've gone through. It's just one of those things where Again, I've had to come to grips with and also let go of a lot of the things that I don't have control of. But getting my butt out of bed, no matter how hard it is something that's in my control. That's number one. So 7 days a week, we're working out, again, because it makes me feel good. And it makes me know that I put myself in a position that I can be there for my wife and my family and my clients, and I can get on a plane and travel, and I can come home on a red eye. Like, these are just things that I've prepared myself to be able to do. That's number one. Number two, I have to read every single day, even if it's 10 minutes, even if it's 10 pages. And I think that's part of it too, is helping people understand how to reset what expectations are and being able to understand that the little bit every single day, that compounding effect will always be greater than the once or twice a week for a longer period of time. And people look at me and go, wait, 120 minutes once a week is better than 70 minutes, broken down over 7 days. I go, I understand that. That's rational. But from a compounding standpoint, from a momentum standpoint, from a discipline standpoint, nothing can beat 10 minutes a day for 7 days, because of what it then, from a longevity standpoint, allows us to believe and honor ourselves to go do.
Chris, the way you articulate ideas is so moving. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. If this episode inspired you, please share it with a fellow athlete or friend navigating their next chapter, because we're all just writing our playbooks as we go. Next week, we chat with a Super Bowl champion who opens up about his anxiety around staying connected with his former teammates and how he adjusted to fighting for his paycheck every season. Until next time, please remember, the game ends, but your story doesn't. Keep living life in full send.